أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين. Last week we discussed verse number 21, which read as those who defy Allah's signs and kill the prophets unjustly and kill those who call for justice from among the people, inform them of a painful punishment. Now, verse number 22 talks about these people. What will happen to these people? Those who kill the prophets, those who kill those people who advise them to good and criticize them for their evil. What happens to them? It says that, verse number 22, أولئك الذين حبطت أعمالهم في الدنيا والآخرة وما لهم من ناصرين. They are the ones whose works have failed in this world and the hereafter, and they will have no helpers. Allah rahmatullah alayhi says that we can deduce two things from this. One is that such people who kill those who criticize them because of their evil and advise them to do good, those who kill them, all their good acts will be perished. I'll talk about the meaning of habita, which is translated here as failed, but we take it now as it says. So every act that they have done, good acts, because a'mal here means good act, because nothing but good act will be void. Bad acts, of course, is a different matter. So their good act will be void. There will be no reward for it. They will not benefit from it. And so this is one thing. Their habt will be subject to habata with ta. And the second thing is that on the day of judgment, they will not be they cannot avail themselves of shafa'ah. This is habitat a'maluhum fi dunya wal akhirah. The meaning of habt is that the action will be void in the sense that it would have been equal had you done it or you hadn't done it. The thawab will go. The reward for it will go. So whatever they do in dunya and akhirah will be void. Now, the meaning of dunya and akhirah, أولئك الذين حبطت أعمالهم في الدنيا والآخرة. Now, some of the mufassirun say that the meaning of habt in dunya is that they do not deserve any praise for their good actions in this world, because the evil that they do is so great that they do not deserve for any good act in this world. For example, a tyrant may be a very generous man, but may kill many people because of his tyranny. So being generous and helping orphans, helping, say, for example, needy people is a good act. But because of that evil act, all these will be void. And this is the meaning of habt. Not void in the sense that they will not be praised for it. And that this is the meaning of being void in dunya. They do not deserve any praise. And in akhirah, they do not deserve any thawab for it. However, maybe a better meaning for habt in dunya and akhirah is that whatever good we do in terms of worship for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in terms of helping people, in terms of charity, in terms of social work, if it is done with good intention for the sake of God, it should create some sort of light in our hearts. It should add to our understanding to our ma'rifah in this world. And then in the next world, it should be our light towards paradise. We should be rewarded for that in the hereafter. And this effect will be, of course, removed. Neither in this world their good actions would add anything to the enlightenment of their heart, and nor in Akhirah it would lead them to paradise, and they would not deserve any reward and thawab for it. So, أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ حَبِطَتْ أَعْمَالُهُمْ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ. Now, what do we have in Akhirah is our a'mal. Do we have any helpers there? No. We may have shafa'ah. Shafa'ah is a different thing. Because some people may have thought that, okay, we worship idols and they would help us in the Akhirah. Allah says there is no nasir, no helpers. Whatever you receive is because of your action. Even shafa'ah is a consequence of your actions. So if your a'mal becomes void, if your actions lose their effects, then of course you would not have anything in Akhirah and you would not be helped in that world. أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ حَبِطَتْ أَعْمَالُهُمْ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ وَمَا لَهُمْ مِنْ نَاصِرِينَ. Verse number 23 is a sort of example for the context that we are in. As I said, we are in a context of arguments, debate, not argument, debate with the Christians of Najran. Then Allah mentions, if you want to really debate in a proper manner, you have to debate based on your book. Now, what if we call you to your book and then you deny it? There will be no basis for debate. Allah gives the example of some of the Jews of Medina, apparently brings this example to the attention of the Christians of Najran, that there are some people here, we call them to the arbitration of the book of God that they believe in, and then they turn away. They do not accept it. And you Christians of Najran should not be like that. If you want to have a proper debate, you shouldn't be like that. So, verse number 23 says, أَلَمْ تَرَ إِلَى الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا نَصِيبًا مِنَ الْكِتَابِ يُدْعَوْنَ إِلَى كِتَابِ اللَّهِ لِيَحْكُمَ بَيْنَهُمْ ثُمَّ يَتَوَلَّى فَرِيقٌ مِّنْهُمْ وَهُمْ مُعْرِضُونَ. Have you not regarded those who were given a share of the book, who are summoned to the book of Allah in order that it may judge between them, whereat a part of them refuse to comply, and they are disregardful. Now, the first thing about this verse is the expression alam tara. Have you not regarded? Tara, of course, means seeing. Have you not seen? However, it's used for the vision of the eye and consideration of the heart and mind. So that's why it's translated here as have you not regarded? And this is usually said when there's something which wonders either the speaker or the listener. So here it means that we are amazed about some people. أَلَمْ تَرَ إِلَى الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا نَصِيبًا مِنَ الْكِتَابِ. We are amazed about some people who are like this, and have you not regarded them in this very amazing manner? So the question is about a group of people أُوتُوا نَصِيبًا مِنَ الْكِتَابِ, have been given a share of the book. Now this nasiban, which is in indefinite terms, may imply dignity and greatness, and may imply the smallness and insignificance. So utu nasiban min al-kitab, because Torah was of course a dhikr from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا مُوسَى وَحَارُونَ الْفُرْقَانَ وَضِيَاءً وَذِكْرًا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. It's a great dhikr, nasiban min al-kitab. Or it may mean that they have been given a trifle of the book. They have missed most part of it. That's another meaning that we can give. Anyhow, whatever the case, utu nasiban min al-kitab, because it talks about given a share of the book, implies that the Torah, which was actually being read and referred to at the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, was not the full Torah that was revealed to Musa alayhi salam. Utu nasiban min al-kitab, a share of the book, not the whole book. This is what they are given. And then it says, يُدْعَوْنَ إِلَىٰ كِتَابِ اللَّهِ لِيَحْكُمْ بَيْنَهُمْ. They are summoned to the book of Allah in order that it may judge between them. Okay, in what matter they were called? There are three different opinions here about the matter for which they were called to the book of God, which was Torah. Of course, some commentators have said that it is Quran, and the Jews were called to the Kitabullah to arbitrate between them and the Prophet. And sometimes some other exegetes have said that it's about the Quran and Munafiqun, but the context doesn't accept that. It's certainly something about the Jews of Medina who were disputing in something, and they were called to the book of God, which was the Torah. Now, what was the matter which was point of dispute for which they were called to the Torah? There are three opinions here. One is that it was about Nubuwwatun Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, because they were, of course, disputing whether this is the Nabi for which we were waiting for all these years, or that Nabi for which we are waiting is not this one. This is a fake Nabi, and we don't find his description in the Torah. The Prophet, peace be upon him, says, okay, bring the Torah. Let's read it. This is one opinion. The other opinion is what is mentioned in Majma' al-Bayan and also in other books, like, for example, Anwar al-Tanzil of Bayzawi. It says that روي أنه عليه الصلاة والسلام دخل إلى مدارسهم. The Prophet entered Jews' schools. You know, there were lots of Jewish schools, especially madrasa, the religious schools in which they were training their children, and especially training the rabbis who wanted to become clerics later on. It's, of course, completely reasonable that Prophet, peace be on him, upon entering Medina, wished to go and visit the schools of the Jews, the Jewish schools in all these three castles, Banu Qurayza, Banu Nadir, and Banu Qaynuqa. Or they may have invited the Prophet to go and visit the school. And so he entered their schools. فقال له نعيم بن عمرو والحارث بن زيد. Two of these Jewish people, probably they were Jewish rabbis, they say, على أي دين أنت. So this should have been at the early stages of the arrival of the Prophet in Medina. Probably, of course, because he was now the leader of Medina, the Jewish people would have liked to have some communication and interaction with him, and they invited him to their schools. And these people asked him, on which religion you are? means on which past religion. Of course, they knew that it's the religion of Islam, but they wanted to see what connections to the past. فَقَالَ عَلَى دِينِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ. I am on the religion of Ibrahim. You know, the Prophet, even before becoming a prophet, was practicing the faith of Ibrahim alayhi salam. ثُمَّ أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ أَنِ اتَّبِعْ مِلَّةَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ حَنِيفًا وَمَا كَانَ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. This ثُمَّ أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ أَنِ اتَّبِعْ مِلَّةَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ, they have two meanings. This is just, of course, I'm thinking aloud. One meaning is that, yes, of course, in the Quran, we have told that this is the religion of Ibrahim, you have to follow that religion. And this is, of course, there are some nuances of rulings. However, it's exactly the same religion of Ibrahim. It may also mean that before Islam, before the descent of the Quran, Allah revealed to the Prophet in the same way that so, for example, أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَىٰ أُمِّ مُوسَى, that sort of revelation, that you have to follow the faith of Ibrahim alayhi salam, not Judaism, not Christianity, nothing else. And that's why, although Judaism and Christianity were more recent religions and faiths, however, the Prophet was following the faith of Ibrahim, Dinul Hanif, as his fathers were doing. However, his fathers were doing it because it was an ancient religion of Arabia, but the Prophet was doing it because Allah had inspired him in following the religion of Ibrahim. Anyhow, whatever the case, as I said, it's just a possibility. Don't take it as something categorical. فَقَالَ عَلَى دِينِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ. He said, I am on the faith of Ibrahim. فَقَالَ إِنَّ إِبْرَاهِيمَ كَانَ يَهُودِيًّا. They said, okay, Ibrahim was a Jew, so you have to become a Jew. There's no difference between us and you. You know, sometimes in these interfaith sessions, we would like to become very, very intimate brothers and sisters and say there is no difference between our faiths, which there are lots of differences. However, of course, we don't want to argue about it. We don't want to create discord in community. But of course, we know there are differences. Anyhow, they said Ibrahim was a Jew. Well, this was something very new. And the Quran, of course, in the discussion between Muslims and the Prophet and Jews and Christians says, ما كان إبراهيم يهوديا ولا نصرانيا ولكن كان حنيفا مسلما. Ibrahim was neither a Jew nor a Christian. And in another verse it says that يا أهل الكتاب لما تحاجون في إبراهيم وما أنزلت التوراة إلا من بعده. Why are you arguing about Ibrahim? Torah was revealed after Ibrahim. So why you say Ibrahim was a Jew? This was a claim. And sometimes we would like to actually monopolize the important and prominent people of history. So when the Prophet entered their schools and these two people asked him, then they said, Inna Ibrahim kana Yahudiyan. فَقَالَ حَلُمُّ بِالتَّوْرَاتِ فَإِنَّهَا بَيْنَنَا وَبَيْنَكُمْ. Bring the Torah. Let's make it a judge between us. فَأَبَيَا فَنَزَلَتْ. They actually rejected that. They did not accept. I don't know how this was, which verses of the Quran wanted to clarify Ibrahim was not a Jew, because it was so clear. The history of the prophets in the Torah is very clear that Ibrahim was living much, much earlier. This shouldn't have been a matter of dispute. Anyhow, this is one possibility. The other possibility is that it was, so this was the second possibility, isn't it? The first possibility was about the matter of the Prophet, that his description was in Torah. The second possibility was about the matter of Ibrahim alayhi salam. The third possibility, which is a famous one here, is that it was about the punishment of adultery. Now, which one of these, I will mention the hadith about the punishment of adultery, but which one of these are of more possibility than others? Sheikh Tusi Rahmatullah Alayh in Tabiyat says that there is no indication in the Quran that which one of these are meant here. That have you not regarded those who were given a share of the book, who are summoned to the book of Allah in order that it may judge between them, but they turn away. So because it is not clear, we just leave it as that. It may have been about the matter of the Prophet or Ibrahim, the religion of Ibrahim, or about the haddan min al-hudud. This is what he says. One of the punishments. Even he doesn't clarify which punishment. However, we have a long hadith in most of the tafsir books, and I am actually quoting this from Majmu al-Bayan, that it says that one man and one woman, both of whom were married, of Khaybar. They lived in Khaybar. They were, especially the man was a prominent man, was a respectable person. They committed adultery. وَكَانَ ذَوِي شَرَفٍ فِيهِمْ. And they were, of course, of honorable families there. And of course, in Torah, it was very clear. The ruling for it was rajm, was stoning. You know, stoning is not mentioned in the Quran. And in Surah An-Nur, what we have is that azani was zaniya fajlidu kulla. It doesn't actually distinguish between adulteress and adultery and fornication. The adulterer and adulteress or fornicators, they are actually not distinguished here. And that's why some people say that actually the ruling of Rajm, which was mentioned here as a sunnah of the Prophet, peace be on him, was abrogated by Surah An-Nur. That the ruling of Rajm or stoning was abrogated, and instead the ruling of 100 lashes. It was replaced by 100 lashes for both adulterers and fornicators. However, of course, based on fiqh, and this is the same in all 5 schools of fiqh, the Shias and Malikis, Hanafis, Hanbalis, and Shafi'is, that there is a difference between fornicator and adulterer. And this is, however, very clearly says that this ruling was in the Torah. So, because in Jewish law, they should have been stoned. And they didn't, of course, they wanted to find a way out of it. And they said, okay, let's go to this new prophet, whatever he rules. So they came to Prophet, peace be on him, and he also ruled based on Torah. فَحَكَمَ عَلَيْهِمَ بِالرَّجْمِ. Then, these two Jewish rabbis, one of them Nu'man ibn Awfa and the other Ibn Amr, they said, Ya Muhammad, you have done injustice to them because their ruling is not rajm, is not stoning. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Bayni wa baynakum at-Tawrat. Between me and you, Torah. Whatever Torah rules, especially because they were Jews. Had they become Muslims, they may, I don't know what was the ruling. It was rajm, according to narrations, but they were Jews. They said, قَالُوا قَدْ أَنْصَفْتَنَا. They said, that is quite fair. Let's bring the Torah. He said, who's the most knowledgeable of you to Torah? They said, there is a man in Fadak, who was again a Jewish area, called Ibn Surah. He is the most knowledgeable. The Prophet sent for him. And because Torah was in Hebrew, it was not translated in Arabic, and it was a very sort of elaborate book. So the Prophet said, bring that part of Torah which talks about this the punishment of this act. That part was brought Ibn Surah because it was in Hebrew, what Ibn Surya did was he read the ruling, but when it came to Rajm, he put his hand on it and just passed. And they say Abdullah ibn Salam, who was present and he knew, of course, Hebrew, he said, Ya Rasulullah, he has actually skipped the ruling. And then he removed his hand and the ruling was there. Al-Muhsan wal-Muhsana idha zanaya wa qamat alayhim al-bayyina rujma. Married man and woman, if they do commit adultery, and if the bayyina is available, then they have to be stoned. And of course, there were other details of this ruling. And then the Prophet said, this is the ruling that the ruling of Torah. And for this reason, the Jews became very angry against the Prophet. Whatever the case, so we had three different views about this, that this was about the ruling of Rajm, the other view that it was about the prophethood of our prophet, and the third about the faith of Ibrahim alayhi salam, whether he was a Jew or not. Whatever the case, what the gist of this verse tells us is that, because it's a general thing, it's about those people who confess faith in something, and then when it comes to practice, they deny it. They move away from it. Isn't it? Have you not regarded those who were given a share of the book, who are summoned to the book of Allah in order that it may judge between them, whereat a part of them refused to comply? If we confess to something, if we acknowledge something as correct, and then when it comes to practice and practicing it is difficult, ثُمَّ يَتَوَلَّى فَرِيقٌ مِّنْهُمْ, refuse to comply and are disregardful. يَتَوَلَّى فَرِيقٌ مِّنْهُمْ وَهُمْ مُعْرِضُونَ. Now, there's a point about literature of this last sentence, يَتَوَلَّى فَرِيقٌ مِّنْهُمْ وَهُمْ مُعْرِضُونَ. Tawalli means i'raz. As Sheikh Tusi mentions, تولى عن الشيء هو الإعراض عنه. If you turn away from something, it means that you have actually made i'rad of that. That's the same. However, it says, why these two synonymous terms have come here together, tawalli and i'rad, why they have the same meaning? He says that this is not repetition, because the first one is to turn away from the one who calls them to the book. Isn't it? يُدْعَوْنَ إِلَىٰ كِتَابِ اللَّهِ. They are called to the book of God. So they turn away from the person who calls them to the book of God, and يَتَوَلَّى فَرِيقٌ مِّنْهُمْ. So they turn away from the Prophet. He said, this Prophet doesn't know. وَهُمْ مُعْرِضُونَ. This is i'rad, or turning away from the ruling, or from the book to which they are called to judge between them. So when they were called, they turned away from the Prophet, and they turned away from the ruling of the book, ruling of the Torah, which was what they had confessed to. Now, the following verse mentions why they do these things, why they kill the Anbiya, why they kill those who advise them to good and criticize them for their evil. Why, when they are called to the book of God, they turn away from it. Why are these things? It says that ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّهُمْ قَالُوا لَن تَمَسَّنَا النَّارُ إِلَّا أَيَّامًا مَعْدُودَاتٍ وَغَرَّهُمْ فِي دِينِهِمْ مَا كَانُوا يَفْتَرُونَ. That is because they say, the fire shall not touch us except for a number of days. And they have been misled in their religion, but what they used to do, to fabricate, but what they use to fabricate. Okay, this verse needs some elaboration about their belief in temporary punishment in hell, as we also believe in that, isn't it? That the mu'minun will have a temporary punishment in hell. So what's the difference? And how they were actually deceived by the lies that was created over years, which is a very, very important matter in every religion. So inshallah, we leave that for our next week discussion. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.
Thank you very much, Sheikh. Unfortunately, Sheikh is unable to join us again this week for question and answers. He has apologized, and he has said that inshallah in the near future we'll arrange a extended question and answer session where we will inshallah take all of the questions that you have on this week's and last week's talk. So any questions you have, please either send them over or keep them in mind, and inshallah we will have an extended question and answer soon. Assalamu alaikum.